In the cold hum of the freezer aisle, danger does not shout. It waits. Silent. Patient. Over the past year, recalls have crept through the frozen section like cracks in the ice. Radioactive shrimp pulled from 13 states. Corn dogs recalled by the millions for sharp wood shards hidden inside. Ice cream recalled twice, once for Listeria, once for nuts that could stop a heart. And waffles pulled off shelves after inspectors found Listeria clinging to the steel of the factory floor. These threats do not sprint, they walk. Slow, steady, inevitable. From warehouse to truck to freezer, step by step until they are in your home. But here's the truth, most shoppers never hear the warnings in time. That's why we're going to show you the 5 frozen foods at Walmart you must avoid at all costs. And don't panic, because there are 2 quiet stars still standing strong. 2 that can save your gut when everything else feels like a gamble. 1 frozen shrimp. The food in your freezer might carry radiation, not in a distant science fiction way. This is a real advisory from the Food and Drug Administration in the United States. Just weeks ago, federal inspectors flagged certain frozen shrimp for contamination with cesium-137, a radioactive element. These shrimp came from an Indonesian processor named Bahari Makmur Sejati, sold under familiar labels in American stores including Walmart. The recall began in late August. Thousands of bags were pulled from shelves in 13 states. The product looked ordinary, sold as raw, easy-peel shrimp in 2-pound bags. There were no strange smells, no unusual colors. To most shoppers, nothing seemed wrong, but laboratory testing confirmed what no one could see with their eyes. Inside that ordinary packaging, traces of radioactive material were present. Radiation exposure is not like food poisoning. It does not send you to the hospital overnight with vomiting or fever. The risk works slowly building over years. That is why cesium-137 matters. It can lodge in the body and increase long-term cancer risk. The FDA issued a clear statement: do not eat, do not serve, do not sell. For shoppers, the question is simple. How do you know if this is in your home? First, check the brand and packaging. The recall covered specific lots of great value frozen raw shrimp, sold in 2-pound bags with the label Easy Peel and deveined Talon 21 to 25 count per pound. On the back of the package, there is a lot code near the barcode. That is the key. The FDA listed exactly which codes were contaminated. If you have any doubt, do not eat it. Next, know your options. Every recalled bag can be returned to the store for a full refund. Walmart has pledged cooperation. If you already opened a package, seal it in a plastic bag and bring it back anyway. If it touched your kitchen surfaces, wipe them down with soap and hot water. Do not panic, but do not ignore it either. There have been no reported illnesses so far. That is good news. But the absence of symptoms today does not erase the hazard tomorrow. Think of it this way: recalls are not about what has already happened. They are about preventing what could happen. When the FDA issues this kind of advisory, it means the testing evidence is strong. As a consumer, you cannot control how shrimp are farmed overseas. You cannot control the inspection process at a factory in Indonesia. What you can control is vigilance at home. Freezer checks should be routine, just like checking smoke detector batteries. Once a month, open your freezer and scan for recalls. The FDA posts them online. Walmart maintains a recall page for items sold in its stores. Bookmark those links. A few minutes of checking could save years of regret. Some will wonder, is it safe to eat any frozen shrimp at all? The answer is not simple. Imported seafood is a global business. Many shipments are safe and pass inspection, but risks do appear, as this case shows. If you want more confidence, look for shrimp labeled with country of origin tags from the United States, or check for certification labels like Best Aquaculture Practices. Even then, remember that recalls can touch any brand, any store. Some dangers hide in chemistry and numbers on a lab test, but others are brutal, obvious, and immediate. Imagine a child taking a bite of a corn dog and finding a shard of wood in the batter. That is not a slow threat. That is a trip to the emergency room. And that is exactly the next freezer story we have to face. 2 corn dogs. It starts in the most ordinary way. A kitchen table, plates lined up, a parent pulling golden corn dogs out of the oven steam curling into the air, children reaching dipping into ketchup taking a first bite, and then something sharp, hard, out of place. Not a hot dog, not batter, but wood. A splinter driven straight into a meal meant to be safe. That single moment sparked reports that reached regulators, and from there, a chain reaction began. On September 27th of this year, the United States Department of Agriculture announced one of the largest frozen food recalls in recent memory. State Fair corn dogs and Jimmy Dean pancake and sausage sticks were pulled from shelves across the country. The problem: pieces of wood embedded in the batter. Not in one bag, not in one store, but across a span of months. Production dates traced back to March 17th and ran all the way through September 26th. By the time inspectors drew the line, 58 million pounds of product were under recall. 5 injuries had already been reported. And officials admitted that many of these frozen foods had not only been sold at major retailers like Walmart, but also shipped directly into school cafeterias. The very places parents trust most to provide safe meals. How does wood end up inside a corn dog? That is the question that leads beyond one freezer bag. At the plant giant machines grind, mix, and pump batter at speeds human hands could never match. Wooden tools, pallets, or even fragments from the building itself can break loose, traveling invisibly through pipes and vats. Quality checks exist, but they rely on random sampling and human oversight. If even one shard makes it through undetected, it can be carried into thousands of products before anyone notices. In this case, it took consumer complaints families finding wood in their food to trigger the investigation. Only then did inspectors follow the trail back through distribution records and factory logs, which raises a deeper question: how many warning signs pass unnoticed until someone at a dinner table becomes the alarm? The system depends on self-reporting. Companies flag problems to regulators, regulators publish recalls, retailers notify customers. It is a chain of trust. But trust is only as strong as the weakest link. When production is measured in millions of pounds, how often does speed outrun safety? Some observers point to profit margins. Frozen convenience foods are a volume business. Faster lines, tighter schedules, bigger contracts. Others wonder about oversight. Federal inspectors are stretched thin across thousands of facilities. Can they really catch everything? Or are we relying on the idea that recalls after the fact are enough to keep the public calm? Officially, no blame has been assigned. The official statements from the company emphasized cooperation, rapid response, commitment to safety. Regulators praised swift action, but the facts remained for more than 6 months. Wood fragments passed through a factory and into family freezers. The system noticed only after children started biting into splinters. Is that failure or inevitability? In a supply chain this massive, is it even possible to guarantee zero mistakes? Or do we accept that recalls are not the exception, but part of the design and ongoing cycle of release? Discover, withdraw, repeat. The packages themselves carry quiet markers, establishment codes stamped near the label. EST 582, P894. Numbers that meant little to shoppers until they showed up in headlines. To regulators, they were keys to solving the puzzle. To families, they were after-the-fact warnings. A language of safety hidden in plain sight but never translated until too late. Wood is not invisible like radiation. It does not linger for years unseen. It cuts, splinters, hurts in the moment. And yet in its own way, it reveals something just as unsettling. A system so large, so fast that danger can ride along quietly until it shows up in a child's bite. And long after the bags are gone from store shelves, that question remains: is the system built to protect us or just to clean up after the cracks appear? 3 ice cream. Ice cream was supposed to be safe, friendly, sweet. The kind of comfort that can soften a long day, turn a tired dinner into something lighter, something brighter. But that promise is cracked. And for many families, it will never taste the same again. The shock came in waves. In July of this year, Helados, Mexico, known to many under the La Michoacana name, announced a nationwide recall. The reason: milk inside products that were never labeled for it. To most, milk is harmless. To some, it is a hidden blade. One spoonful for a child with an allergy can mean hives, swelling, even a stopped heartbeat. That recall stretched across all 50 states, Walmart included. One family was already sick before the warning reached the shelves. Barely a month later, another blow. Bluebell, a brand tied to generations of southern summers, issued an allergy alert of its own. A flavor called Millennium Crunch, packaged under the wrong lid. Tree nuts inside, but no warning on the label. The mix-up reached 16 states, Walmart among the sellers. To families with nut allergies, that mistake was not small. It was a loaded weapon hidden under a layer of sweetness. Think of the feeling in that moment. You are a parent serving scoops in the glow of the kitchen light. You trust the carton, the words printed on it. You hand the bowl to your child. You take comfort in the routine and the innocence of dessert. Then later you hear the recall. You see the name of the brand in the headlines. And you wonder, was the danger already in your freezer and your child's bowl in your hands? That is the wound no recall can fully heal. Not just the physical risk, but the broken trust. Ice cream is not a product we approach with suspicion. It is the opposite. It is birthday parties, family reunions, quiet nights on the couch. When contamination or mislabeling creeps in, it does more than threaten bodies. It breaks something deeper. It turns comfort into doubt. Facts matter. The Helados, Mexico recall was issued on July 18, 2025, after the first illness was confirmed. The Bluebell recall came on August 22, 2025, triggered by the wrong lids applied in a factory line. Both cases were logged on Walmart's own recall page, proof that these cartons reached their stores. These are not rumors. They are recorded events traceable in public. But facts alone do not explain the sting. The betrayal comes from what ice cream represents. It is the safe space of food. The one treat we give without hesitation. That is why these recalls cut so deep. They show that even the foods meant to soothe us can carry hidden risks, and that no carton, no scoop, no brand is beyond doubt. So the next time someone reaches for the freezer, the moment is not the same. There is hesitation, a flicker of mistrust, a question that was never there before: can I be sure? Ice cream was supposed to melt our worries, not create new ones. But in the freezer aisle of 2025, sweetness itself has been compromised. And what comes next is proof that this betrayal is not rare. Even the staples of the breakfast table have carried a secret danger, one buried not in sugar, but in something far colder. 4 frozen waffles. Just like ice cream, waffles were supposed to be the same, sweet, warm, and comforting. They carried the same spirit, but the story is different. Breakfast tables, childhood mornings, the smell of golden batter toasted to perfection. Waffles were more than food. They were a symbol of ease, of family tradition, of innocence. Until the freezer betrayed that trust too. In October of last year, Treehouse Foods recalled every frozen waffle and pancake from one of its facilities. Not just one flavor, not one batch, but all of them. The danger was Listeria monocytogenes, a bacteria that does not forgive mistakes. It has caused miscarriages, stillbirths, hospitalizations, even deaths in past outbreaks. And here it had been found clinging to steel deep inside a factory. The scope was staggering. Best buy dates stretched far into the future through October to 2025, even April 2026. That meant the risk was not just on store shelves, then it still lingers in freezers today. The recall spanned countless labels, but Walmart's own Better Goods was named in the United States. In Canada, even the Great Value brand was pulled back. The FDA listed Walmart directly among the retailers. No illnesses have been tied to this recall yet. That is the good news. But the fact remains, breakfast, the meal meant to start the day clean, was shadowed by one of the deadliest foodborne pathogens known. Step into the provider's shoes for a moment. Imagine standing inside that plant. A factory built to run day and night, churning out millions of identical waffles. Orders stacked high from the biggest chains in the country. Contracts tied to strict schedules, unforgiving margins. Every hour the line slows, money bleeds. Every minute a product is late, shelves sit empty. Pressure builds like heat in an oven. In that world, mistakes are not shocking. They are inevitable. It is not about one careless worker or one broken machine. It is about a system that demands more, faster, cheaper. A system where food is not just nourishment, but capital. And in the endless cycle of production and consumption, even something as innocent as a waffle becomes part of the grind. We like to think of food as clean, wholesome, untouched. The truth is harsher. Nothing in this system is truly pure. Not shrimp from overseas, not corn dogs from a school cafeteria, not even the waffles on a breakfast plate. Behind every bite is a chain of decisions driven by contracts, deadlines, profits. That does not mean despair. It means awareness, strength, independence. Do not hand your safety over completely to companies, labels, or even regulators. They do their part, but they cannot catch everything. In the end, it is your eyes, your vigilance, your judgment that matters most. The freezer may hold risks, but it also holds choices. And the next story proves it. Not everything is broken. Not everything is tainted. There are still stars in the frozen aisle foods that stand up to scrutiny, that give back a measure of trust. Choices that can steady your gut when everything else feels fragile. 5 frozen pasta. It looks like any other lunch line. Plastic trays sliding down metal rails. Children waiting in line with chatter and laughter. A worker in a hairnet scooping pasta and meatballs from a heated pan. A meal served in trust meant to fill hungry stomachs before an afternoon of classes. But trust can break quietly. In late summer, health officials traced a Listeria outbreak back to ready-to-eat pasta dishes, including Walmart's own market-side linguine with meatballs. What began as a handful of illnesses grew into hospitalizations and then into deaths. The Centers for Disease Control released its warning. The Food Safety and Inspection Service issued its own alert. The food was in homes and schools and cafeterias. Places built to nourish, places built to protect. Listeria is not a common germ. It hides in cold environments where most bacteria die. It survives refrigeration. It can even survive freezing. That is why its presence in prepared meals is so dangerous. For most healthy adults, infection brings days of fever and pain. But for seniors, for newborns, for anyone with weak immunity, it can be lethal. For pregnant women, it can mean a life lost before it even begins. These pasta trays were made not by Walmart itself, but by a supplier named Fresh Realm, then distributed under multiple store labels. The products moved through warehouses onto trucks, into school kitchens and family freezers. When the recall came, it did not affect one neighborhood or one state. It spanned across regions, reaching deep into daily routines. Imagine the shock. A school nutrition director reading the notice and realizing that food served yesterday may be tied to today's hospital visit. A parent who thought they were offering convenience now left questioning whether they placed danger on their own dinner table. Communities that count on consistency and safety suddenly wondering how far the reach of contamination extended. The ripple is more than medical. It is emotional. Food in shared spaces is about more than calories. It is about connection, reliability, trust. When that trust is broken, the damage spreads far beyond the freezer aisle. It shakes the confidence of entire communities. Behind the trays are forces no cafeteria can control. The push for cheap, fast, convenient meals has built a supply chain stretched across states and stitched together by contracts. A single plant can produce food for millions. And when cracks form inside that plant, the shock travels outward, touching homes and schools in places that never see the inside of the factory. The officials acted quickly once the link was clear. Notices went out, recalls began, refunds were offered. But for the families already touched, the words came too late. And for those serving meals in schools, the stain of doubt does not wash away easily. The next tray of pasta is no longer just pasta. It is a question mark. No one enters a cafeteria expecting danger. No one serves pasta to a child expecting to risk a life. And yet here we are learning again how fragile trust can be in the modern food system. The freezer aisle has delivered radiation splinters, hidden allergens, and contamination. But the story does not end there. Because for all the recalls and betrayals, there are still foods that hold the line. Not everything is broken. Not everything is unsafe, and two of those choices are waiting just ahead. Choices are 6 frozen salmon. In the same freezer where danger has lurked, one product still shines like a beacon. Salmon firm and pink caught in the cold waters of Alaska, carrying a label with 3 simple letters, MSC. That mark is not decoration. It is a global promise. The Marine Stewardship Council certifies that this fish was caught in a way that protects oceans, respects ecosystems, and ensures future generations will still have fish to catch. For years, seafood has carried a shadow of doubt. Mislabeling, overfishing, and contamination have made shoppers suspicious. But this salmon stands apart. To earn the MSC label, every link in the chain is tested. From the deck of a fishing vessel in Alaska to the processing plant to the sealed bag in your freezer, auditors follow the trail. Every step has to meet strict rules. If a single point fails, the label cannot be applied. That is why this certification is celebrated worldwide. It is recognized not just by scientists, but by chefs, conservationists, and governments. The award is not just the blue logo, but the trust it represents. In a market where corners are often cut, MSC certified salmon shows that excellence is possible. The health rewards are clear. Salmon is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, proteins, and nutrients known to support heart health, brain function, and overall wellness. Unlike processed frozen foods, this is not a product of chemical shortcuts. It is whole, clean, and honest. Families can prepare it with confidence knowing what is on the plate matches what is on the label. But perhaps the most surprising achievement lies in its price. At just over $11, Walmart's MSC certified wild Alaskan salmon is priced well below what specialty seafood shops or premium grocers often charge, making sustainability and quality far more accessible to everyday families. That balance between sustainability, nutrition, and affordability is rare. It is the reason this product deserves recognition. In a world where food recalls have shaken confidence, salmon with this label restores it. It proves that big chains can deliver not only volume, but also value rooted in responsibility. Awards and praise have followed MSC's program around the world. Independent watchdogs and environmental groups continue to support it because it works. Oceans benefit, communities benefit, and consumers benefit. This salmon is not just food. It is proof that better choices can rise to the surface even in a sea of compromises. Think of the difference. One frozen bag leads to recalls, refunds, and doubt. Another frozen bag carries recognition, achievement, and trust. In the same aisle, 2 very different futures are offered. The choice belongs to the shopper. 7 frozen Alexia potatoes. Before it ever reaches the freezer, the story begins in the dirt where potatoes grow in rows under open skies. Unlike many frozen products stacked with additives and hidden ingredients, Alexia's line of potatoes is built on something simpler. The process begins with farms that grow ordinary, recognizable crops. Russet potatoes, sweet potatoes, red potatoes. Harvested, cleaned, cut into familiar forms, fries, wedges, hash browns. From there, the recipe is closer to a kitchen than a laboratory. Oil, sea salt, herbs, spices. The kind of ingredients you can pronounce. The kind you might already keep in your pantry. That simplicity matters. Frozen food has too often been a space where chemistry replaces cooking. Preservatives, fillers, stabilizers, colorings. The shortcuts keep costs low and shelves full, but they also open doors to confusion, mislabeling, and recalls. With Alexia, the process tilts in another direction. Keep the list short. Keep it honest. Freeze the product not to disguise it, but to hold it in time. The transparency runs beyond the bag. Alexia has committed to avoiding artificial flavors and synthetic additives. That is not a marketing slogan. It is part of the process itself, verified through labels and disclosures. Consumers can see what goes in and, just as importantly, what is left out. And while other freezer items have been tied to recalls over contamination, Alexia has remained absent from those warnings in the past year. That is not an accident. It reflects the structure of the process. Fewer complex ingredients mean fewer points of failure. Potatoes harvested and prepared with minimal handling are less vulnerable than meals assembled from dozens of components. The approach has earned attention. Nutritionists point to frozen vegetables as some of the most reliable items in the aisle, often locking in nutrients at their peak. Alexia's process follows that logic, combining the efficiency of freezing with respect for the natural form of the food. In short, it feels closer to the farm than the factory. There's also a cultural thread in the process. Potatoes have long been a staple in American kitchens, mashed on holiday tables, fried at diners, baked in family ovens. By freezing them with minimal interference, Alexia keeps that tradition alive in a form that fits modern schedules. A bag from the freezer can meet a weeknight dinner without stripping away the memory of where it came from. Of course, no process is perfect. Frozen fries are not the same as fresh harvest. But in a landscape where recalls have eroded trust, Alexia potatoes remind us that simplicity is still a defense. The fewer steps between farm and freezer, the fewer cracks for danger to slip through. That is the lesson in this bag. Not that awards or labels guarantee safety, but that process itself matters. When companies choose restraint, when they cut less, add less disguise, less, the result is food that stands stronger in the test of trust. The freezer aisle can feel like a minefield. Shrimp touched by radiation, corn dogs hiding splinters of wood, ice cream that betrayed its sweetness, waffles shadowed by bacteria, pasta traced to hospital beds. Each story left cracks in the trust we place on food. But it is not all shadows. In the very same aisle, salmon carries a mark of global responsibility, proving oceans can be fished with care. Potatoes frozen with honesty show that sometimes the simplest process is the safest. These are not just products. They are reminders that better choices exist even in the most crowded shelves. The lesson is not fear but vigilance, not despair but independence. We cannot control the system, but we can choose wisely within it. The freezer will always hold risks, but it can also hold resilience if we reach for it.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.